We're here with Keegan Thompson, Cubs starting pitcher, possibly reliever, hybrid. We don't know, but first of all, excited to have you here. And we're wondering what you think of your first Cubs convention experience. Like, this is a different thing if you've never been here, right? Like,
yes.
Not every fan base has this.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to be here. But yeah, it's a little crazy. I've heard stories, and I was asking guys yesterday, a couple coaches, like, what to expect, and they're like, you don't know. It's like it's a whole other level. Like, you don't know what's going to happen. And walking out yesterday, getting introduced, it's like 10, 15,000 people in that one room crammed in there. And that's like a bad day for Wrigley. So that was pretty cool.
Well, you mentioned that you're kind of asking the questions, but when you look at like the roster, the last time you had one of these, a lot of these guys weren't here. A lot of the guys on the Cubs weren't here. So is it okay that at least you guys are kind of doing it together, going through it the first time as a group for the most part?
Yeah, I think so. There's a couple guys that have been here before. I think Kyle was the only player maybe, and Hap. But I think there's been like Steele was here and a couple of guys that were prospects before that had not made it to the big leagues yet, but had some experience here at CubsCon, and just kind of asking them some questions. And so it wasn't lost going out there and doing whatever. So
our podcasting buddy, Cody, who's not here today, but he's like your biggest fan. And at the beginning of last year, he labeled you as the mayor. He wanted you the next mayor of Chicago. He was so excited.
My aunt saw that, and she sent that to our whole like family group chat immediately.
The mayor?
Yep.
So the mayor made it all the way to the mayor. Very good.
He'll be directing your campaign this year.
Yeah. Yeah. And we'll keep him like 50 feet away from you at all times during the, But when you pitched that game against the Braves, you guys had lost, I think, 10 in a row, and they had won 14 in a row. Would you say that was kind of a launching point for what you're trying to do? I mean, it was certainly a great outing, but was that kind of one of the first times where you're like, this is something I can build on the rest of the way?
Yeah, I think so. That was like one of my probably better starts that I had. I think I had like a couple of rough outings before that, and with the Braves coming in that were hot like that, it was. I mean, I didn't know what to expect going out there that day. I didn't think it was going to be like as good of a day as we had, but it was like one of the turning points I think we had for our season. I think we finished over 500 the second half, and that was kind of leading into the second half of the year. And when you have those kind of games like that and the camaraderie that it wasn't a comeback, but it was 0-0 going into the 8th or 9th, I think, and scored a run in the 8th and then got the closer to close out the game. And I mean, it was just a really cool experience, and the fans were in it. And I mean, it's just, it was awesome.
So obviously that was a start, but you had a lot of successes as a reliever in 2022. What are the different challenges between coming out of the bullpen and starting, and why did you find so much success, doing the multi-inning relief weapon role?
I think as the multi-inning relief role, you have the few like 2 to 3 innings, and then you have like your 2 or 3 days off. Whereas a starter, you go like 5 or 6 innings or however long you go, and then you have 5 days off. And a normal bullpen guy, you'll go 1 inning one day, and you might be back out there the next. And I think going back and forth from starting to relieving, I think that little in between like long relief role was kind of really big for me to bridge that gap of starting and relieving.
When you look at the difference between those two roles, and you just talked about it, but can you see that relief role is sort of changing value-wise in baseball? Like, a couple years ago, 5 years ago, you would have thought of it as it's a long relief role. Now you look at it and it's like, well, I don't know where you rank things for priority for a team, but it seems like, especially for the Cubs, that specific role has increased in value throughout each year incrementally. And do you see that value changing?
I think so, and I think it kind of started back in maybe 2015, 2016 when the Indians were kind of doing that in the postseason, and they were using their bullpen after like the 4th or 5th inning, and now it's kind of bled over into the regular season, and coaches and managers and players they're kind of shifting towards that a little bit in the regular season too. You don't see very often anymore where starters are going 7, 8, 9 innings anymore. It's kind of starters go 4 to 5 to 6, and if you go 6 innings, that's a good start, and kind of like the bullpen take over from there. So I think the bullpen, yeah, like you said, like there's been a shift in the worth or the effectiveness of a bullpen player.
So do you prefer one or the other? Do you enjoy one more than the other?
I think they both have their advantages. It's cool to start and go out there and have the crowd from the very beginning and listen to your walkout song the whole time. But it's also something different when you come out of the bullpen and in the middle of an inning, there's guys on base and getting out of the inning and not letting the starters or the guy that was in the before you, not letting his inherited runners score. And it's really fun and cool to go out there and do that.
In that role, or you talk about you don't really have a preference, and I know you've said that throughout this past season that you are willing to do whatever Rossi or Tommy, whoever it is, asks of you. Have they expressed at all, whether it's exit interviews or now kind of leading up into spring training, what they kind of see your role to be heading into this season?
Not really. I think we're going to have kind of a similar role as last year. I would imagine I'll probably do like the majority of a middle reliever, multiple inning guy, spot starts here and there when I need to get put in. But we'll see what happens. You never know.
One thing that was super impressive about your season last year, and Justin Steele the same, we talked to Tommy Hotovy about it this offseason, was the fact that you guys were adding pitches during a season.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that you don't see that very often in Major League Baseball. Like a starting pitcher goes out there, or a relief pitcher goes out there, and all of a sudden, well, there's a slider that you didn't see before. There's a cutter that you didn't see before. How difficult was that as a player to do, and will you try to continue doing that throughout your career?
I think so. It's always difficult to like create a new pitch or like learn a new pitch, but it's fun, and that's like what like makes it great about baseball and like just evolving, because you're going to have to evolve every year because you're facing the same guys no matter what every single time. Every year you're facing them probably 2 or 3, 5 or 6 times a year now too. And so like you're always kind of doing things. It's kind of, we were talking last year with Stroman, and he was talking about pitch grips and everything, and we were talking about trying to make or figure out like a changeup or a curveball or slider, and he's like, if I throw one day and I don't like it, then I say, okay, I'm going to the next one. Like, you're always evolving, so it's the process and kind of getting to the end goal.
But is it harder to do it in season? And if it is that a mental thing or is it a physical thing that's more difficult?
I think if you do it in season, it'll be more mental than physical, just from taking it out into the game. Because you can, like, in the off season, you practice it, and it's the same thing when you get into spring training or taking that pitch you learned in the off season. You're gonna have to have the mental like aspect of it to go out there and just believe that it's gonna work and trust the pitch, and like just if it works, and just try to see and just work. I don't know, but
just go with it, right? You just got to kind of wing it sometimes.
Yeah.
I talked to Kyle during the season, and this is prior to him being shut down, but he was talking about the conversation has been had about potentially adding a slider at some point in his career. Has he picked your brain yet? Because he told me that like you are kind of someone he looks up to in that sense, as far as you added that pitch mid-season. Has he picked your brain and asked you for tips on how to do that?
Not yet. When I kind of picked that pitch up, I think he was already in Arizona last year, so he hasn't asked me too much about it, but I'm sure there's plenty of guys in Arizona that have just as good or better slider than I have, and I guarantee he's been asking them about it.
That's pretty crazy, isn't it, as a young pitcher to be like, hey, Kyle Hendricks is going to pick my brain about a pitch.
I know. It's
pitch
nuts.
Game 7 of the World Series.
I grew up watching them. I was in school, in college, watching them win the World Series, and, I got drafted by them the year later, and then seeing all those guys in the clubhouse when I was in the minor leagues, like you want to kind of stay away and give them their space, and now like being a part of the team, it's like, yeah, it is kind of weird and kind of, well, it's the other way around now. It's fun to be a part of that.
So to go back to the starting pitching, and you look at the depth that the Cubs have, adding Jamison Tyon, bringing Drew back. Obviously, you're here and are available to start. Justin, all these guys. When you look at all the different arms in the system that could potentially be starting games for the Cubs this season, what does that do for you? Like, what's the excitement level? And as far as heading into spring training, does that kind of create a friendly competition kind of thing between you all? Obviously, trying to earn that rotation spot.
For sure. I think there's probably 10 guys that made starts at least last year in the big leagues, if not more than that are an option for our starting rotation. So it's definitely a friendly competition, but it's also nice to know that we have that depth that we might not have had in the past. So if somebody goes down, then you have somebody else that can step up and take over and fill that role.
When you're sitting here in Chicago in the offseason with your wife and you're watching free agency go on and you're seeing all the different moves, I would think that you were pretty excited to see some of the gloves that were added behind you. As a pitcher, that's got to be pretty cool to see what's been set up by the front office. Because what are the 9 Gold Glovers?
It seems like
I say 9.5 because I give Nico a half because he lost to Dansby. So, he deserves at least a half. So if you've got a total or a combined 9.5 Gold Gloves behind you, you've got to feel pretty good as a pitcher.
Yeah. I mean, just the middle of our infield and out, like just the middle of our field of defense, like we got to be one of the best in the league. We got Bellinger in center field probably with Dansby and Nico up the middle, Jan and Tucker behind the plate. I mean, we should have one of the better. We shouldn't have a problem up the middle.
And you mentioned Tucker and Jan,
and also we just added Eric Hosmer.
Yeah.
He's a Gold Glover, first base.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So Happer, Gold Glover.
You mentioned
Bellinger.
Bellinger.
Right, yeah.
Bellinger. Everyone has a Gold Glove, I think, on this roster at this point. But as far as the catchers go, and not to knock Wilson at all, like obviously Wilson was a big part of this team, but now you have Tucker and Jan as the main two catchers, 2 veteran guys, 2 very respected as far as game calling and managing a pitching staff. What excites you about working with those two? Obviously, you've worked with Jan already, but adding Tucker into that mix and working with these two going into the season.
They're smart. They know what they're doing. They're veterans. I met Tucker yesterday, and the first day after throwing with him, like the first thing he said to me was like, "So what do you like to do? Like when you're in a jam, like what do you like to go to? Like what's your best pitches to go to?" And just from right away, he's trying to learn the pitchers, and that goes a long ways for us.
When you look at this offseason and you get ready to go to Arizona, was there one thing this winter that you really wanted to work on to improve for yourself?
Just strength, lower half strength. I don't have very big legs, but just some just strength, just some create more power on the mound.
Have you continued the hot yoga this offseason? Did you find a good spot in the Chicago area to do that?
I actually have not continued the yoga this offseason, just with Louis with me. It's been nice that he's been going with me to the field, and he's been running around the weight room and working out and chasing balls around in the cage. And so just being able to take him with me and just have him there and see him be happy and run around and stuff, that's just been what I've been doing this offseason.
What's your favorite uniform? Do you like the Wrigley ones? The dark blues on the Friday? Because I feel like you've got a pretty good vibe going when it comes to uniform setup. Some guys have a sloppy uniform. I feel like that's not you. Am I wrong?
I appreciate that.
I feel like
I would like to think so, but I'm glad somebody else thinks so.
Yeah. So do you have something that goes in your head and be like, I want this when I'm pitching. I want to look like this. And then do you have a pair of shoes or cleats that you want? Because we also talked to Tommy about his collection of J's. So, where do you fall in that ranking?
You have to go with the classic pinstripes at home. The Wrigley ones are also really cool. They're different, but once you get used to them, you kind of grow to love them. Like the more you see them, the more you love them. And then on the road, it's hard to beat the classic gray. I love the gray jersey, but the blue one's a little bit more comfortable. So we tend to go with the blue a little more often.
But what about like socks? Have you ever gone just straight stirrups, or are you?
Here? No, I haven't. I used to wear stirrups in college sometimes when we had to wear our pants up, but I'm usually just a crew sock guy down underneath. Yeah. Pants down.
Very good.
We've loved having you on. We'd love to have you on again throughout the season. And is there anything you want to tell Cubs fans about this upcoming season? Because I feel like it's been a rough stretch for everybody, but I feel like things are trending in the right direction.
Yeah.
Do the players feel that too?
I think we're all excited, especially the additions we made in the offseason and the way we're going and headed. I think we have a really good group of players and a great roster, good pitching staff, and we're going to have a good lineup, and I think it's going to be something to be excited for.